Hello, sixth graders. Today in 6.4, we're going to be multiplying and dividing positive and negative numbers. The same rules apply throughout the whole lesson, so watch closely. I'm going to be cruising through these pretty quickly, so I want you to watch and see if you notice any mistakes I might make or if I'm perfect throughout. But let's watch here. So there's two rules. There's a multiplication rule and there's a division rule, but they're the same rule. So when you're multiplying, the answer in a multiplication problem is the product. If you have two numbers with the same sign, it is positive. The same sign, it is positive. So that means if I have 2 times 2, it equals 4. It also means this. If it's negative 2 times negative 2, I get a positive 4. That's what's kind of new today and what's going to be new for you to kind of understand. So if I have two negatives, when I multiply each other, I'm going to get a positive. That's what this rule means. But down below in this next rule, it says the product of two numbers with different signs is negative. So I have a negative 2 times a 2. My answer is going to be a negative 4. The product of two numbers with different signs. So I have a negative number and I have a positive number. So when I'm adding, it kind of cancels each other out, right? But here, when I'm multiplying, I get a negative. The same rule goes for division, the exact same rules. Two numbers, when I divide, I get a positive if they have the same sign. And I have two numbers when I divide, if they have different signs, I get a negative. So watch closely as I go through these here. So right here I have two numbers with different signs. So my answer is going to be negative. Now I simply just multiply. 12 times 5 is 60. So my answer is negative 60 because I have a negative number times a positive number. Take a look at the next one. I have a negative number divided by a positive number, so my answer is going to be negative. 63 divided by 7 is just simple division then, and that equals 9. So negative 63 divided by 7 is negative 9. I have a positive divided by a negative, so my answer is going to be a negative. 24 divided by 4 is negative 6. Now I have negative 9 times what equals a positive 54. So it means I have to multiply negative 9 by a number to get to 54. Well, let's first figure out what is 9 times what equals 54, or what is 54 divided by 9? And the answer is 6. Now, if we watch closely, if I have a negative number, here times a positive number, this number right here is going to have to be negative. But it's not negative, it is positive, so I have to go a negative 6. So if I have negative 9 times a negative 6, that equals a positive 54, because two negatives times each other equals a positive. Negative 50 divided by what number equals 10? Once again here, I have, well, first of all, 50 divided by what is 10? I have 5. But negative 50 divided by 5 is a negative 10, and this is a positive 10, so I have to make this a negative 5. So remember, first of all, just divide. What is the division answer, or what is the multiplication answer? Well, 50 divided by 5 is 10. Now let's just make sure the signs make sense. Negative divided by negative is a positive. Next problem here. Now I have 3 problems, so I just read it like a book. So I'm going to start with my first two. Negative 6 times 5. Well, 6 times 5 is 30. Negative 6 times 5 is negative 30. Now I'm going to multiply negative 30 times 8. Take it one step at a time. Negative 30 times 8, well, I have one negative times a positive, so I have a negative here. And 3 times 8 is 24, and I have to add a 0, so my answer is negative 240. Let's take a look here. I have 48 divided by, that's what this symbol is. Right here I have negative 6 minus 2. Well, let's take a look at what negative, because it's in parentheses, I have to do those first. Negative 6 minus 2. Well, we've been doing a lot of this for practice. We're just going to do leave, add, change. So negative 6 plus a negative 2 is a negative 8. So then I go back over to my problem here. 48 divided by negative 8, I have a positive divided by a negative, so my answer is going to be negative. Well, what is 48 divided by 8? It is 6, so my answer is negative 6. Let's go in parentheses first. Negative 8 times 5. Well, 8 times 5 is 40. I have a negative times a positive, so my answer is going to be negative. And then I'm just adding 12. Negative 40 plus 12. Well, it's a negative 40 plus a positive 12. So now my answer is going to be negative because the larger number is negative. And then so my answer is a negative 28. If I'm in the hole if I'm in the hole $40 and I make 12 bucks at the lemonade stand, I'm going to still be in the hole $28. 50 times negative 23. Well, I'll tell you this, I don't know what this is mentally, but I do know that my answer is going to be negative because I have a positive times a negative. So I just simply have to multiply. You're going to have to do this today. Just make sure that once you do all your multiplication, you have the correct sign in your answer. 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 5 is 15. Place value holder. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 5 is 10. I add these up. My answer is 1,150. Negative 1,150. Let's keep cruising along here. Look at this one. 6 times, well, what's 12 plus 15? It is 27. And then I just simply have to multiply. No negatives involved, so I don't have to get confused. And I like this problem because a lot of times you get so confused with negatives and positives, and you forget that when it's just all positives, you can just multiply the way you've always learned how to multiply. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 4 is 16, so my answer is 162. Look at this one. We have a negative 90 divided by 10 plus a negative 45. Well, first of all, let's start with in the parentheses. Negative 90 divided by 10. Well, 90 divided by 10 is 9. I have one negative and I have a positive, so my answer is negative 9. Plus a negative 45. Well, I have two negatives. When I add two negatives up, I get even a bigger negative. So that would be a negative 54. A problem that looks confusing like this, when you break it down simpler, it's very easy. So keep that in mind today. Look at this one, you're probably like, wow, there's a lot going on in this problem. It's not really tricky. Just take it one step at a time, just like reading a book, right? So we're going to start with this. 56 divided by negative 7. Well, 56 divided by 7 is 8, but since there's a negative here, we have to make it a negative 8. Now we're going to divide it by negative 4. We have two negatives now, so 8 divided by 4 is 2. And since they're both negatives, it cancels out, so I have a positive 2 for my answer. Moving on to the next problem. Let's take a look here. What number times negative 7 plus a negative 4 equals a negative 56? This one is a little trickier, but you have to remember, we're reading it like a book. First of all, I would take a look at the end of the problem. 7 times 4 is 28. I do know that. And if I multiply these two together, I'm going to get a positive 28. But my answer is negative. And I'm pretty sure 28 times 2 gets me a 56. But I need to get to a negative. So that means over here, I'm going to have to put a negative 2 here. Negative 2 times a positive 28 gets me to 56. I could also do it like this. Negative 2 times negative 7 is a positive 14. A positive 14 times a negative 4 also equals a negative 56. Just breaking it down simpler. Look at this next one. What number divided by 40 equals 9? Well, let's see here. I have to have a bigger number divided by 40 equals a negative 9. Well, what's 9 times 40? 9 times 40 is 360. 360 divided by 40 equals 9. But I need it to be a negative 9, so all I have to do is add this to a negative. Negative 360 divided by 40 equals negative 9. Here's the next problem. Looks like we have fractions, we're going to just multiply them. Mr. Green, how do we do this? All we have to do, kids, is realize we have a positive, we have a negative. So that means my answer is going to be negative. And then we just simply multiply them. 2/3 times 5 6. Multiply across, I have a 10 over 18. Can we reduce these? You bet you can. Divide them by 2, divide them by 2. We have 5/9. Now, I know you could easily just be copying every single answer down, and then you get to math and you're so confused because you have no idea what I just did, but really focus in on what we're doing here today. Because if you look at me like you don't know what you're doing, I'm just going to have you rewatch this video because I'm taking the time to show you how to do this. It makes complete sense. If you're noticing that this math is hard for you, it's probably because you don't know your math facts yet. And as a sixth grader in January, we need to know our math facts. Absolutely. So you need to spend some time at night getting to know those things, okay? I've been saying that since September. But anyways, let's continue on here. Let's take a look here. We have multiple parentheses. We'll do these parentheses first. We have 8 times a negative 3, so we have a negative 24. I'm going to subtract it. We have to do these parentheses next. 8 times a negative 9, so I have a negative 72. Do you see how I kept those negatives in there? Now watch. Simply leave, add, change. I'm going to leave, add, and I'm going to change this. So I have a negative 24 plus a 72. So that means my answer is going to be positive. Now I'm going to take a 72, I'm going to take 24 away from it. Borrow 12 minus 4 is 8, 6 minus 2 is 4. So a positive 48 for an answer. Now you're probably like, how on earth could you get that answer from this? Well, if you take it down step by step, it will make sense. This next one here, I have 0.25 times negative 8. All I have to do is 0.25 times an 8, because I know my answer is going to be negative because I have a negative and a positive. And this is simply multiply. 8 times 5, I have a 40. 8 times 2, I have 16, plus 4, I have 20. Now, I want some of you that don't know how to move your decimals to really watch closely on this, okay? Really focus in on this. I have a decimal right here. I always have a decimal in every single number, right? Here's my hidden decimal. Here's my other decimal. I have to count all the numbers that are after the decimal. 1, 2, and there's nothing after this decimal, so I have 2 numbers after the decimal. So the decimal starts here, and I have to move it 2 spots. 1, 2. So my answer is there, so my answer is 2, negative 2. There's my new decimal. 2.00, but that is written like 2 for an answer. Some of you might have to rewatch this several times because you're still not getting that, but that's how it's done. Let's take a look here. I have a negative number divided by another negative number. Well, let's see here. 3/4, and now all I have to do is find, so I know my answer is going to be positive because I have a negative divided by a negative. So my answer is positive. And I'm just simply going to find the reciprocal and then multiply. 3 times 2 is 6. 4 times 1 is 4. How many 4s go into 6? I have 1 and 2 4s left over. That equals 1.5, which is a positive 1.5 because 2 negatives divided by each other. Let's keep cruising along here. So we're going to be evaluating, but B is negative 7. So watch closely on these. So I've taken this first one. I have negative 9 times a negative 7 because B is negative 7 minus 27. Now I'm going to cruise through these kind of fast, so hang on tight because we're getting a little long on this video. Negative 7 times negative, or negative 9 times negative 7. Well, 9 times 7 is 63. 2 negatives equals a positive minus 27. 63 minus 27. I have to borrow. 13 minus 7 is 6. 5 minus 2 is 3. Answer is 36. Moving on. 3 left. 11 times, I have a negative there, and B is negative 7. Do you see how I did that? I already have a negative, but B is negative 7. So 11 times 2 negatives equal a positive times 7. So my answer is 77. Pay close attention to this. Negative and negative always equals 2 positives. Keep that in mind. Cruising along here. I have a negative, and I have a negative 7 because this is a negative, and B is negative 7. Divided by a negative 14. You're like, how on earth do I do this? Well, take it at one step at a time. Negative and negative is a positive 7. 7 divided by a negative 14. Now, I know a lot of you are going to give me a 2 for an answer, but 2 is not the answer to this because 14 divided by 7 is 2. So you're going to have to go, well, by the way, I have a negative and a positive, so my answer is going to be negative. I have to go 7 divided by 14. How many 14s go into 7? 0. 14 times 0 is 0. Subtract 7. Bring down the 0. How many 14s go into 70? Well, what's 14 times, I don't know, 5? 4 times 5 is 20. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 70. Perfect. 14 times 5 is 70. I'm going to subtract 0, bring down the 0, 0. Answer is 0.5. A lot of you can get tricked on this one today, so watch carefully because you might see one just like this today. Last one, I have b, which is negative 7, minus b is negative 7 plus a 16. Now take it one step at a time. Negative 7 minus, well, what's inside here? Negative 7 plus a 16. So that means I'm left with a positive 9. Then I just simply go leave, add, change to finish this off. Leave, add, change. Negative 7 plus a negative 9 gives me a negative 16 as an answer. I know the video got long today, but you know what? It was important, and you need to understand that the same thing goes all the way through with your math on this. When you're multiplying two positives, it equals a negative. When you're multiplying two negatives, I apologize. When you're multiplying two positives, it equals a positive, and when you're multiplying two negatives, it equals a positive. If you have a negative and a positive, your answer will always be negative. Good luck, and I look forward to working with you in math today.